Hello and welcome to the Media Copilot, a podcast that explores how AI is changing media, journalism, and content creation. I'm Pete Paschal, longtime tech journalist and founder of the Media Copilot, and I'm excited to bring you fascinating conversations with fellow journalists, media executives, and the people building the ways we'll create and consume news in the future. I'm excited today to welcome to the Media Copilot podcast Doug Petkanics. Doug is founder and CEO of Livepeer. Livepeer is all about video infrastructure. You think about the YouTubes and the Twitches of the world, there's a lot of video processing that goes on to serve up all the streaming video we consume. In fact, video now accounts for 82% of all internet bandwidth. Livepeer crunches a lot of those bits, but it does it in a decentralized way, which makes the processing a lot less expensive. The company's recently upgraded the network for AI-generated video, so it'll support services like Sora. And if you don't remember Sora, it's OpenAI's as-yet-to-be-released video generator, which creates video clips from just a few prompts. Now, a big issue with AI videos is the idea of deepfakes, and I was eager to get Doug's thoughts about what the role of infrastructure is in keeping our media ecosystem healthy, and how services like Livepeer can guard against misinformation. I learned a lot from the discussion with Doug, and I hope you find it as interesting as I did. And if you do, I'd encourage you to subscribe to the Media Copilot newsletter if you haven't already. The link is in the show notes. I'd also really appreciate it if you leave a rating or review in whatever podcast app you're in. Those really do help the show get to more people. And hey, if you're on YouTube, a like and subscribe would be most appreciated. Those are the buttons down there. Lastly, you can check out everything we offer, including AI training classes for media, marketing, and PR professionals at mediacopilot.ai. Okay, now on with the show and my conversation with Livepeer's Doug Petkanics. Doug, welcome to the Media Copilot.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah, happy to be here talking to you today.
Awesome. Well, I'm super pleased you were able to make the time. So a lot of my listeners might not really be that familiar with Livepeer and what you guys do and what a decentralized video infrastructure network is. Can you give me sort of the slightly long elevator ride pitch of Livepeer? I mean, we're a podcast after all, and sort of the problems you were setting out to solve.
Yeah, sure thing. So Livepeer is over 7 years old at this point, and it's a decentralized network that's been live on the Ethereum blockchain and Arbitrum blockchain for over 6 years. So our mission from the beginning was to build the world's open video infrastructure. Sort of as Ethereum was rising as a developer platform, we saw people building the financial layer and smart contract layers and file storage solutions, but no one was building sort of the real-time media streaming elements, if you will. And video is one of the most popular forms of media on the internet. It's over 80% of internet bandwidth. And even 30 years into the history of the consumer internet, it's still very difficult to get video streaming smoothly at scale, in live and on-demand context across the internet. And decentralization actually brings a ton of benefits when it comes to video ingest and processing and distribution. And so pretty early on in this sort of Ethereum lifecycle, my co-founder Eric and I set out to build an open video infrastructure for the world that developers could use to power applications that look like YouTube or Twitch. Fast forward a number of years, we have a network of node operators, hundreds of node operators all around the world contributing their GPUs and computing power to encoding video on the Livepeer network. It's used by hundreds of applications and developers to power video streaming. It powers over 3 million minutes of unique video encoding per week for media apps, creator apps, content and media applications. And still have a long way to go ahead of us, but that's sort of the quick overview.
So it sounds a little bit like Skype for video, like not, for video infrastructure, right? So you're dependent on nodes in the network, people contributing their bandwidth or their processing power, I guess, from the GPUs to power sort of the encoding, transcoding, et cetera, that it takes to run, video streaming on any particular app.
Yeah, that's right. I'd say a little more infrastructural than Skype, if you will. Developers use us instead of building on Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud or big video platforms like Mux or Brightcove or Vimeo. They can use Livepeer as a developer product through APIs in order to use this infrastructure network to do the video transcoding and processing, as you
I guess I'm sort
alluded
of
to.
thinking more about Skype back in the day, as opposed to Skype as a Microsoft product, right? Because it was all peer to peer, and now it's a little different. But yeah, the idea is the same. And like Skype obviously had a consumer facing app; it wasn't just infrastructure. But I totally get the whole peer side of it. So. And it's on the blockchain, so there's that. Can you tell me like why that? I always ask this of every blockchain company because it's always like, why do you need the blockchain? What problem does that solve?
Yeah, so the blockchain is used to coordinate the node operators and supply side of our network. You can think of the infrastructure as like an open marketplace where anyone with idle GPUs or graphical processing units can advertise them on the Livepeer network and say, "Hey, I'm available to encode video, and by the way, I'm willing to encode live streaming video for this much money." And they actually compete against one another in this marketplace to win the jobs that come in of people who want to encode and stream video. And so this coordination layer, there's also incentives and security to make sure they're doing the work correctly and that they're incentivized to keep their capacity online and highly performant. Leads to this global network that's actually 10 to 50 times more cost effective for video encoding than what you would pay to hosted cloud services. And that cost effectiveness is due to the market competition, the open access of the network that can monetize these idle GPUs and computing power, and just some interesting dynamics in the market where there's so much idle supply of video encoding capacity out there in the world that's maybe the other aspects of the GPUs are performing other work like crypto mining or AI tasks, but there happens to be video encoding and decoding chips on those GPUs that can only encode video. And so having an open marketplace like Livepeer where they can put that capacity available really just opens up this extra supply to the market that can be really cost effective.
And it tends to be, I guess, companies or operations with like a good amount of GPU capacity. Because I guess, as people listening to this might be like, "Hey, I've got a GPU in my computer. Can I get on the network?" In the way that again, the Skype analogy keeps coming back to me in terms of it was actual peers. Of course, Skype had super nodes and that sort of thing. But I mean, what if someone's listening to this and thinking, could I become one of your nodes? Like, what is sort of the minimum threshold there?
Believe it or not, they absolutely could. I think the beating heart of our community is our node operator community. They're called orchestrators, but they range from big data centers with a lot of capacity and professional operations down to prosumers that are sort of have a couple mining rigs and they put them on the network, to even people with one or two cards, and that can still be an additional source of income for them. Now, what do they need? They need good bandwidth and 24/7 connectivity to the internet.
Right.
If your internet's going out during the middle of a live stream, obviously that's problematic for the user whose video you're encoding. And yeah, they probably need a little bit of sophistication when it comes to their DevOps and their operations of monitoring their hardware and tuning it and updating parameters and whatnot.
Gotcha. So, and then that sort of suggests like the trade-off here, if you're like an app that wants to take advantage of Livepeer, is there a certain sort of reliability question mark around it? I mean, it sounds like you do a lot of vetting of that to make sure the network is reliable. Like what is sort of the trade-off and sort of we're going with something like Livepeer as opposed to some more sort of traditional service?
Yeah, the network's highly reliable. The user shouldn't have to think about that or worry about some gamer unplugging their computer during a live stream. So, the demand side node, the gateway node that a developer would build on, what that's doing is if it doesn't get a segment of video back from one of these node operators quick enough, it fails over and tries another one, right? And this whole blockchain coordinated incentive system uses things like the amount of stake delegated towards a node, past work history, as a signal to have a high probability of working with nodes that are highly performant, and that leads to high reliability. So my comment about you don't want your internet going out in the middle of a live stream, it applies more to someone who might be thinking about putting their capacity on the network. Like, if that happens, they're just not going to get work. They're not going to earn money. They're not going to retain work for a long period of time. The trade-off that a potential user would make here. Theoretically, there shouldn't be any trade-offs. This should be the world's most cost-effective, infinitely scalable, and highly reliable network. Now, if you want to build directly against it, you're you're doing a sort of weird, unconventional thing. You're running a node on a decentralized network. You're funding it with cryptocurrency, and you're paying direct into the network. So the operations around that might look different. Um, you're sending your video into a sort of decentralized network of operators where there's no saying the hardware provider that's encoding your video. They obviously can see it in the memory of their machine at the moment. There's no saying they're not, going to repost it or redistribute it. So it should be done on publicly viewable content anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So I understand you've launched something called an AI subnet. Can you explain what that is and convince me that it's not just attaching AI to something?
Yes, big moment in Livepeer occurred just this week when we hit the first milestone on our AI video initiative. So, video being a key word. So I mentioned our mission is world's open video infrastructure. Like many industries, AI is having tremendous impact on the future of media and the future of video.
Tell me about it.
Well, for a long time in video workflows, you've been able to use AI to do things like automatically determine whether the video being streamed is a certain type of content. Like, is this illegal content or adult content, right? You've been able to use AI to do things like generate subtitles for speech to text in videos, right? Maybe for this podcast, you'll automatically generate captions, or YouTube will do it for you, right? Using AI. But there's this sort of new game changer in the world of AI in terms of generative AI. And this is exemplified by now, for the first time, users can create videos simply by typing prompts into AI or by giving images as inspiration into AI. And out can come a couple seconds worth of actual, high quality video. And that's really cool. Like, if you saw the Sora demos from OpenAI.
We all saw the Sora demos. Yeah. Before that, Pika, and since then, the Google, I think they call it VO. I forget what they call it.
Yeah, Google V0, Runway AI, Pika are great video AI players, right? So this is going to be a game changer for, entertainment, for marketing, for, social media and memes, for creator economy. But it requires so much computing power in order to generate these videos, right? Like generating, 2 seconds of video might take a minute of compute time on very expensive, high performance GPUs. And it just so turns out the Livepeer network is thousands of global GPUs. And when we look to the future of video and you say, well, video is going to change because people are going to be, creators and producers are going to be assisted in generating it using AI. That those capabilities should be available in the world's open infrastructure. The Livepeer network can be highly cost effective and performant for aiding and assisting in these tasks. Let's bring these capabilities to the Livepeer project and ecosystem. And just this week, we sort of launched the first milestone where we have media AI workflows live on the network. So our users can send in, through APIs, send in text prompts and turn them into images, send in images and turn them into videos, and use Livepeer's full surrounding suite of video tools to, use those output videos in their applications.
Gotcha. So it's essentially you've upgraded the network so that people using its capacity to generate videos with AI, now that's essentially native, I guess, to your network, and you have all whatever tools. I'm not sure what tools you're referring to, but like they account for that and can essentially use your huge capacity to sort of help with that. As opposed to, I guess, going like it sounds like you said, one of the big advantages of your decentralized network is cost effective, and that a big thing in this stuff, because it's so compute heavy, is obviously cost, that a lot of people are very conscious of. It might still be cheaper than going out and shooting something and hiring a giant crew, but you still got to pay for the compute.
That's right. That's right. And there's a shortage of access to compute in the world that can do these sort of generative AI tasks. Like,
Yeah.
NVIDIA makes these GPUs. They're selling out like crazy. Like 60%
Sure.
of their sales are going to only the hyperscalers: Google, Amazon, Facebook, OpenAI, right? And as a startup, as a hacker, as a researcher, if you want to access that capacity, you can only do it by like pre-reserving large blocks for large amounts of time in these hyperscaler clouds. And so, alternative open access networks like Livepeer and other decentralized networks can represent a great solution that can make sure this capacity is available in an open way to anyone that wants to build and pay as they go.
Okay, so that's Livepeer. I totally get its role in sort of the infrastructure layer of media and video. So now I'd like to shift a little bit and talk about content authenticity, which intersects very directly with this, and particularly since you guys are on the blockchain. So that's content authenticity is becoming like a really big issue with regard to the videos and images that people are creating. That some of them are deepfakes, but the sort of issue is bigger than just deepfakes. It's just sort of the proliferation of AI content and what that means for I guess the information ecosystem, and like what people do they even know what they're looking at anymore, right? And so if people are going to your network for building this video, because it sounds like it's a great solution for that, particularly in terms of cost, how can you simultaneously help people doing that with your service, but also help a healthy information ecosystem so that we don't get just a proliferation of deepfakes and content that is just sort of making the world unhealthier in a sort of an intellectual and cultural way, if you get my drift. Can you tell me
Yeah.
sort of what the role is here of this infrastructure layer?
Yeah, definitely. So this whole notion of content provenance and authenticity, super important topic in a world where there's going to be an abundance of media, right? Because as you can generate images or you can generate videos simply by typing prompts, we're going to see so much more media created. And as you alluded to, it's hard for consumers to know whether they can trust that this was real and authentic versus something that was made up by artificial intelligence for positive purposes or for nefarious purposes, right? I think it's worth starting by acknowledging like the world does have a huge challenge coming at them when it comes to these questions, and there's no perfect silver bullet solution that exists in the context of the way that everyone consumes media today. A lot of things are going to have to change. The way people, web browsers are going to have to change. Like the way people consume broadcast media is going to have to change. The way people attest and verify media is going to have to change. And this represents changes through the whole stack. So definitely a big problem coming at us. The good news is, blockchains represent one really useful potential tool that can be a useful input into some solutions around these areas. And, and I think it's important that everyone building in this space, build responsibly and keep these solutions and these tools in mind so that, like you said, we don't end up in a healthy place and people are given the tools that they need for the rest of these stacks to be built out. So what does that mean, right? Where do we go?
Especially the blockchain component of it, because I feel like that's super key.
Yeah. So when one thing that the blockchain is really good at, and what a lot of solutions around this space are working on, is what I would call like provable attestations. And what that means is when a piece of content is created or edited or manipulated, someone or something can make an attestation or say something about that content. They can say, hey, I'm a piece of hardware I'm a camera that captured this content originally, or I am a creator who used the camera to take the photo, or I am a transcoding network that converted this input, video into these 5 output videos at different resolutions, right? And all we can do is we can record those claims, and then people or tools can review them later, and people can decide whether they trust them. And so the blockchain in particular is a great place to record these claims
Right.
because it's open to everyone. History can't be edited or modified at the whim of a single person who controls a database or a single company or government. Necessarily, we know that the cost of attack to do that is billions and billions of
Yeah.
dollars and requires global coordination. So the blockchain is a great place to record these attestations.
Yeah.
That's one important part, right?
Yeah, and just to kind of like expand on that, or it might be obvious, but just to make sure it's clear. So these putting these attestations, like generally is thought of as metadata in a lot of cases. So it's like it's attached to the file or whatever, right? Like, oh, this is all the stuff that happened, and that's doesn't ever seem like a great solution because you can always just strip it out, and just it's gone. And then you're like, okay, well, now you don't know, right? And now we're back to square one on whatever the problem is, because yes, you might at some level on some platforms and distributors might filter out stuff that doesn't have the labels, but a lot won't.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so what the blockchain will do is like it's no longer just attached to the file. There's a connection essentially, so that if whatever platform editor distributed network needs to check this thing, it's not just checking on the file, it's checking on this independent third party thing that can't be manipulated. So that's super important.
Yep. That's right. That's right. And I think we're getting to the point of how do people decide whether to actually trust something or make use of these attestations that can be read from the blockchain and can be verifiably linked to the content. That's where you get more into like reputation. We can come back to that, but even the user experience at the end of the day. So, if you're watching a video in your web browser, the browser, or in a social media app like Twitter, for example, like the browser or Twitter needs to show the user something that indicates to them whether they can or cannot trust this content. And the
Right.
history of the browsers would show that actually people don't really trust or pay attention to they don't really pay attention to like the positive affirmation that, hey, this content is like certified green, it's a thumbs up, right? But they do pay a lot of attention to, like, let's call it the scary warning, right? Like the big
Right.
red X that says, ooh, be careful with this content. Do you want to proceed? Right. And
Yeah.
you've even seen browsers go so far in the SSL space to not even allow you to go to websites that don't have verified SSL certificates without really
Right.
clicking through some advanced settings. And that stuff works. But this is where I was talking about, like, the whole stack needs to change. You actually need browsers or applications to make use of these technologies as well, and to be able to be willing to implement sort of the right user experience patterns to either give them that sort of ineffective, like, positive thumbs up thing, or the scary warning to say, hey, you might not want to trust this content. But I do think it's a question that we'll see. Will there be sort of like trusted only content experiences that only show content that you can verify from the source of where it was captured, how it was edited, whether it was AI generated or not, and whether it has those provenance chains and attestations along the way. And I don't know. We'll see if
Yeah.
consumers care and people create great experiences around it.
Can I throw an example at you just to sort of really illustrate the issue? So there was, and this is a little while ago, but it was an image, not a video. But there was an image that was circulating on Twitter, or X, I guess, and it was basically a picture of what looked like a breaking news event. It was like there was like a bombing, portrayed some bombing at the Pentagon, and it actually got picked up by a major news source, Bloomberg. And the reason was, there were verified accounts, essentially people with check marks or whatever on Twitter that were sharing it. So that seemed to check out. It was enough, I guess, for them to sort of think they were authentic. And it ended up moving markets, and it was a sort of a big media mini scandal, right? And give me the scenario where this kind of provenance is in place, and there are, We talk about sort of the steps in this whole media ecosystem that would have to exist for it to work, because it's obviously, you mentioned cameras, transcoders, and we're talking about media organizations and distributed platforms on top of that,
Yep.
right? Which all part of the part of the chain. But in a world where that's in place, how would that have played out? How would the guardrails have kept that from disseminating?
Yeah, good example. I think this gets to the one layer we didn't talk about too much yet, which is identity and reputation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we can say there can be these attestations that say, I'm the camera that captured this. I'm the infrastructure that encoded it. I am the creator who produced it, or the media agency who vouched for it. And that's where identity comes in. So, if this is the BBC saying, I, as a media organization, am the one who captured this content and distributed it, and I have my attestation of that on the blockchain, then this content presumably can be more trusted. But, how do you know whether it actually is the BBC that's making that attestation, or it's just, someone nefarious saying that they're the BBC to do that? And that's where the blockchain actually, as a potential identity layer, offers another
Right.
solution, right? I think we've seen through things like, what are identities on the internet? They're typically domain names, right?
Right.
They're right.
Yeah.
You sort of trust a domain name. You trust the content you see at a domain name. I think blockchain based and cryptographically secure domain names have shown to be one of the killer use cases. People's ENS handle is their identity, and those can't be taken away or stolen. They exist according to protocols, and they reputation gets accrued
Mm-hmm.
to them. Right? People can look and observe on chain the history of interactions with that account or address who's making these attestations. And so, in this case of the fake news event, let's call
Mm-hmm.
it,
Yeah.
if there was a reputation based sort of on chain attestation that, hey, I created this content and I captured it, and there might be more history attached. Here's the infrastructure service, here's the camera, etc. Then humans still have to make a judgment whether
Mm-hmm.
to trust that or not. And hey, blockchain nothing can solve like human behavior to
Right.
perpetuate something that's fake. But if the tooling at the end of the day makes it easy for consumers to see that, hey, this was verified and attested to as created by the BBC, and they trust the BBC, then that's a step better than what we have right now, which is the tools don't help them. They just
Right.
show them the imagery without any sort of trusted attestation data.
Yeah. So in this case, I feel like the consumer might be the Bloomberg reporter who's like looking at this thing that's circulating around and is saying like, oh, okay, like I've seen this photo. Wow, looks serious. But oh, here's the chain, like whatever, the attestation attached to it.
Yep.
And instead of the BBC or whatever it is, it's like Jimmy's basement blog. And they're like, wait a minute, dot whatever, dot eth or et cetera, or dot io. And they're like, okay, that doesn't sound right. But there's also the chance of like it just doesn't have anything, right? Which is the case here,
Yep.
right? So in
Yep.
that case, it would be more like there's a standard attached to sort of random photos that come in, and that sort of comes at the sort of media site level, where it's like if something doesn't have the attestation, you have to set a higher level of scrutiny. And that's sort of, I think, the evolution we want to get to, but we also have to acknowledge that that's probably going to take a lot of time, buy-in, hard work to make sure that sort of happens in our media ecosystem.
Absolutely. That's why I started with no silver bullet solutions that
Yeah.
change human behavior, the entire ecosystem, et cetera. I think when I was alluding to like, is there a healthy approved only news organization that emerges, or like a new application that emerges that becomes really popular because it is utilizing these tools in a way that surfaces healthy content? I don't know, but you see things get disrupted all the time as a result of
Yeah.
new shifts in technology.
Well, I think, one of the things that you guys are obviously doing is that there's the organization, it's called C2PA. I forget what it stands for now, but it's basically Content Provenance Association, something. But it's a industry alliance that is all about advancing this idea, whatever it may, whether it's on the blockchain, whether it's not. It's like, we need some standards of provenance, and so presumably as they do their work and you guys work with them, I think the vision we want to get to is that, big networks, media networks, or what have you, will eventually like set that standard. And it's like, okay, this is a good standard. It's great. Now we're not going to, or either not that we're not going to run stuff that doesn't have it, but it's like we're going to favor stuff that does have it, and it's going to, we need to encourage it. And I don't know. It seems to me like there's work to be done there, on who are the players and who would have the most influence, and what the incentives are to adopt this, right?
Yep.
But I
Yeah,
think for media, it's clear. I guess I would ask in other parts of the ecosystem that probably you do deal with. How do we incentivize this even more beyond just, hey, it would be healthy for if we did?
Yeah, so taking a quick step back, the C2PA is the leading working group working on the technical standards to define what this metadata is that should be associated with all these images and where it lives and how you trust these parties. And Livepeer is, I think, the first sort of blockchain or Web3 based project to be part of this working group, which also includes Adobe and Microsoft and OpenAI. And those are really positive signals. Their commitments to it are, I think the impact is less about, hey, how do we verify that like non-AI created content is real and authentic, but it's going to be more immediately impactful in terms of marking and attesting to AI generated content so that everyone knows that it is AI generated. And then you can, provide the cues to indicate this clearly is AI generated.
Right.
And the fact that you have the leading AI infrastructure and processing and model companies participating is a really good signal that there's high momentum here. So, what are the incentives that you see for people to actually sign this content? Say it's AI generated. One thing that we're seeing, I think, with Adobe in particular, they've invested a lot in the data that they use to train their AI models for. If you want to generate an image within Photoshop, for example, using Adobe's models, they went through a lot of work to make sure they train their data set only on data that they bought or licensed or had themselves. And so what they're sort of attesting to within their C2PA attestations in media is that, hey, this was trained on like clean data, if you will. And a lot of people see the lawsuits that are going on, and hey, OpenAI just settled with this news organization. They trained on this. Like, can I actually use the output of this model? Am I doing content infringement? Oh no, I feel safe like only using this clean model, if you will, where I don't have that legal risk, and I can trust this attestation because it's in the metadata, and that's what gives me the security. So I think there's some incentive to like attest to the positive attributes that people down the line might value.
Well, the clean data one is huge, and that would definitely apply to all kinds of training data sets, certainly visual, but also text-based. It seems like it's just a massive concern in the enterprise that, okay, you don't want to do anything that will down the road make you liable for something, or be found, you build something foundational with whatever process that just ends up being fruits of the poison tree, right? So that's the thing that opens up a whole can of worms, in my view, of like auditing these data sets and how that works, right? Because Adobe's a good company, and I know some people over there, so I don't mean to cast doubt on them at all, and I think their claims are legit, but it's like there's still a little bit of like, well, how do we know? Like, has someone actually a third party gone in and audited what you've actually done this on? So there's a little bit of that. On like, if like to your point of like, if there's a human somewhere who's made a bad decision, it's very difficult to correct for that systemically. But assuming that's the case, And assuming we can audit these and have confidence in those attestations, I think that would be a massive incentive, because that would fuel so much, I think, enterprise adoption of this, where, of course, the whole industry is like, that's where the real money is. That's where it's going to really know AI has arrived. So I think, you've kind of uncorked what I think a key incentive will be here in sort of figuring this out.
Yep.
This has been great. What is the future holding for Livepeer here? Now that you've got your subnet, you've got your distributed network that a lot of folks are using. Where do you see you guys extending in the future?
Yeah, we're really excited about the growth of both sort of the adoption of the video streaming through the Livepeer network and this new capabilities that are brought by, what AI brings to the future of video. So for the rest of the year, we're really going to be taking this sort of early AI subnet capabilities of, hey, you can generate images, you can generate videos using AI, to how do developers, use this at scale? How are they able to bring their own models and their own workflows onto this network to make sure that it can be flexible and meet the needs of all the video and media developers and the innovators that are creating sort of the future of media when it comes to combining these technologies. So, a lot of R&D and ongoing development work to do in this cutting edge space, but we always do it with the video filter and with the with the users and design partners in mind. So yeah, check out livepeer.ai if you're interested in learning more and getting involved in this initiative. And our community is very welcoming for anyone looking to learn and jump in.
I was just going to ask, where can people go to learn more? Livepeer.ai. Thank you very much, Doug. This has been a great conversation.
Yep, thanks for hosting me. Great to be on.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with Doug Petkanics. Like he just said, you can check out what Livepeer is up to at livepeer.ai. And if you like what you heard, please take just a minute to leave a rating or review for the Media Copilot in your podcast app. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter and check out mediacopilot.ai for our classes on AI for journalists, marketers, and content creators. Seeing you in the future.